Hola, hola. Welcome, everybody. Bienvenidos. Good afternoon, good evening, buenos dias to those. I'm so excited to welcome such an incredible team of storytellers and advocates and change makers and explorers to our special Latino Conservation Week conversation on diversifying outdoors. My name is Christian Lamont. My pronouns are he and him. I am here in Los Angeles, which is Tongaland. And I would love to start off with a round of introductions. A lot of folks know you all, and a lot of folks do not know you. I will be joined by my co-host, Luisa Vargas, who's also on the Latino Outdoors storytelling team. And with that, why don't we kick off with some introductions? Diandra, would you like to go first?
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Diandra Marizet. My pronouns are she, her. I'm also calling in from Tongaland here in Los Angeles, California, and it's so wonderful to be here with everybody. I'll pass it off to Jose.
Sweet. All right. Saludos, everyone. José González, he, him, his. Do I respond to anything offered with joy and respect? I normally live and reside in unceded, occupied, stolen land of the Nisenan, Southern Maidu, Miwok, among many others. Currently Sacramento, California, Sacrastan, Califas, although today I'm kind of sneaking through Tonga land as well. Y lo paso over to Erick.
Buenas tardes, soy Erick Cedeño, Erick Enrique Cedeño, he, him. Also, Tongaland, Gabrielinos, here in Santa Monica.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I'm Luisa. As Christian said, I work with the storytelling team at Latino Outdoors, and I'm excited to kick off this conversation today about exploration. So we are talking today about exploration and also about diversify outdoors, because that's the theme today for Latino Conservation Week. And I wanted to start off the conversation just with the question, what does diversify outdoors mean to you? And Erick, why don't you start us off with that?
Well, deep question, because diversifying the outdoors could be simple as seeing people of many races outdoors, right? So not seeing just one person of, when I go camping, most of the time I'm the only Afro-Latino outside, and people look at me kind of strange, and I have so many different experiences. But today I want to put a seed out and make sure that my son doesn't have to go to some of the experiences that I had to go through. And for me, it's diversifying the outdoors, is making it accessible to everyone.
Thank you for sharing that. I think we can all relate to those stories here. Jose, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, thank you. Gracias, Erick, because that's really well put, I think, in terms of the intergenerational work, right, that goes into this. And I would say two things. One is, with the founding of Latino Outdoors, we were saying, how can we connect the full expression and diversity and variety of quote-unquote Latinidad as the identity with the wide variety and diversity of outdoor experiences. So when I think of diversify the outdoors, there is both the what are we diversifying it in relation to a dominant culture. So as Erick said, more people that look like us, we know we're out here, but we might not always see ourselves represented or feel we're welcome in the same way. And then within our own community, what does it mean to really both embrace and amplify and celebrate, right, all of our, both the inter and the intra diversity of our respective communities.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, very powerful stuff. And in addition to Erick's answer, Diandra, anything you would like to mention?
Yeah, no, I love and resonate with both of those answers. I think when it comes to the outdoors, for me, diversifying means a return to cultural relationship to land. I think diverse cultures all around the world are so deeply informed by the lands that they're nurtured on. So I think that by increasing access to the outdoors, we are creating space for those relationships to thrive. And when those relationships thrive, we have tools and lessons and solutions that become available to us as an entire environmental movement, which also helps to expand those tools that we have available to fight things like the climate crisis, but also just return to those thriving relationships to land. So yeah, that's what returning to culture and diversifying the outdoors means to me.
Absolutely. I think all of your answers, I think, encompass a lot of what Latino Conservation Week is all about. So thank you all for sharing that. Um, and while we were putting together this conversation, and we had all these great voices, we kind of felt like there was a theme emerging, and that theme was exploration. We felt like all of you were explorers in your own way. So I am going to now ask you, we talked about diversifying outdoors. What does exploration mean to you? And I will let whoever wants to answer first go. Any takers?
I can go ahead.
Yes,
I was gonna.
go ahead, Jose.
We can do the dance of deference. I'll quickly add, and then we can add more afterwards, of course, because when you talk about exploration, for me, a couple of the elements are just as Diandra mentioned. There's a sense of reconnection, of healing. Sometimes I say of healing severed connections, which means a reclamation often of not just the work, but even the words and the concepts. So exploration to me, it's both a leaning into what is intuitively human curiosity and wayfinding and wanting to know what's just beyond, which is adapted. It comes to how we have evolved with the land and with each other, and also recognizing that words like exploration can have become so associated with, with a colonial enterprise, for example, that some people say, actually, exploration brought me a lot of harm, and so it's hard to lean into some of those words. And so that's why for me it's kind of a both and. Well, how can we heal some of these separate connections so we can reconnect with the awe, with the healing, with the curiosity, with all of the health and wellness that can come of being in a relationship with each other and with the land. Back to Diandra.
Yeah, I'll piggyback off of that for sure. So I think connected to what Jose is saying, when I think of exploration, I immediately think of, and this applies to any group of people or any person at anywhere in the world, but we have a unique relationship with how our own senses, smell, taste, hearing, touch, vision, and so that perception of our senses and how it shaped our relationship to nature. We have a unique relationship with how our senses have informed culture and relationship to land, and that is through exploration. So we've explored all these beautiful things, like how foods can nourish our communities, or how physically moving our bodies in different conditions generates growth in ourselves, and even how dance and song, which is so fun, can release this really powerful energy of reverence or some type of ceremonial solidifying of recognition of maybe seasons change, which is part of how we culturally recognize that relationship to land. So I think exploration is a huge part of how we shape culture, and that's a huge reason why I also think it's so important that we preserve the cultural histories of communal thriving and adaptation and resilience, because if we don't have those stories, which have been erased in large part by colonial ventures, as Jose was saying, we forget how our elders and our ancestors have expanded our cultural senses, if you will, through exploration.
I love both of your answers. Very different, but also very similar in a lot of ways. So thank you both for sharing that. Erick, what does exploration mean to you?
Yeah, for me, exploration is going beyond the physical and sometimes going internal. I was not born here. I was born in Panama. And one of the reasons I started exploring is because for me it was healing. My mom always pushed me to go beyond. And she knew at an early age that I was an explorer and I loved history. So, and she encouraged that, and she never limited um, me going beyond. And when I came to the US, I wanted to see more. 14 years ago, I decided and I committed to myself to see the US by bicycle, just to see the landscape and to meet the people of this country, and the culture. But then I went beyond that, and I started exploring internally, and that's when the healing started happening for me, for someone that did not grow up or was born in this country. So exploring is, yeah.
Can I add something real quickly, since I wanted to bring it up earlier, and since Erick laid into it? I think for exploration, sometimes I say cultural wayfinding, right? As a way that to Erick's point, I did my own exploring of my cultural identity. Born in Mexico, came associated with that identity, then come to the US, and now you're Latino. And then I had to unpack all of that in a way that was not reductive but expansive. So to Erick's point, it's a meeting with different spaces, which for me it's really powerful, because as I said before, we don't want to Columbus our way into exploration to say like, oh, it didn't exist until I arrived there. It'd be like, this place has a history, a people, a set of experiences that might be new to me, but I can't presume, right, that I am the determinant of holding the power to define it only in my ways. And so that's why I think, as Erick mentioned, that the internal exploration is also powerful in that way, right? To be able to lean into that and say, what am I co-defining? What am I reconnecting to? And then challenging maybe definitions that have never been healthy for me.
I love this conversation. And like Luisa said, we can drop one word in and get so many different answers and perspectives, but there is a through line. There's a lot of similarities into what you all are saying. So I wanted to go into one by one with you all, based on conversations, based on knowledge that we have about work that you're doing, work that's coming up. Erick, you recently shared with me that you're embarking on a whole new adventure. We know that you're part of the Explorers Club. Is that right? And that that's exploration on a very literal term. Can you share with us about your upcoming adventure and why it means so much to you?
Sure. Like I mentioned before, for the past 14 years, I've traveled the whole U.S. by bicycle, different routes, and through social media, I created this persona called Bicycle Nomad. But one of the things that I discovered throughout my exploration, my 14 years of traveling the country, is that I'm not only doing bicycle stuff. Bicycle is what I show on social media, but I do hiking. As a matter of fact, on Sunday I'm heading up to Colorado to do a 4-day hike up this mountain. But in 2025, I was asked to join a team to go to the North Pole and to ski across the North Pole. And for me, I say yes to all these experiences. Again, as a kid, my mom always encouraged me to go beyond and push me. She's like, go, regardless of how you look, regardless of how you talk, like your accent, you could do whatever you want to do. And until this day, I believe that. In 2022, I was inducted to the Explorers Club, and for me, it's one of the top highlights in my life. And so many opportunities have come from joining that club, especially going up to the North Pole in 2025.
That's amazing. And if you have any invitations to offer, I know Jose and I would love, and Diandra would love to go. Diandra, you shared with us, in our conversation, and we put it, in your title, that you are a poet, and you can also tell that when you're speaking to you. You're a poet and you're a storyteller and you're an advocate, amongst other things. You're also the co-founder and the executive director of Intersectional Environmentalist. Can you share with us how some of your storytelling, the advocacy and organizing work intersects with what's coming up for Intersectional Environmentalist?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that something that we learned through the founding of IE, which was born in 2020 during the uprising of the Black Lives Matter movement and just this general social uprising in America, something that we came face to face with was the fact that the birth of any system, whether it's a harmful one or a healing one, it always starts with a story. So IE was born to meet the fact that so many of us haven't been given the right story. And we use art and storytelling to help shift the narrative of the environmental movement so that people understand there's so much cultural context missing from the environmental movement and beyond. And we've been working really hard over the past few years to course correct that narrative. And storytelling is one of the most beautiful ways that we can do that, especially when we think about intergenerational divides having played a huge part in the tensions over the past few years. When I think about poetry, when I think about art, even when I think about like film, like the movie Coco coming out, for example, the way that art manifests into intergenerational healing tools is so powerful. So when I think of like children's books or the movie Coco, I think of many of my own family members for the first time being reconnected with traditions around things like Dia de los Muertos, or what it means to actually use our language and symbols from our culture as artistic expressions. So yeah, that's been a really beautiful journey through IE. And lately we've been really excited about reconnecting communities with the stories of their people, their elders and their ancestors in hopes of sparking, more of that intergenerational healing. And I think that one way we've been doing that that's really beautiful and special to me has been through our free book giveaway program. In that program, we've been curating books that we think are environmental justice oriented, but also just culturally reclamation oriented books, if you will. And we've been giving those away for free and purchasing them from indie bookstores just to continue to support not only the authors that are helping us reclaim those narratives, but also the indie bookshop owners. Shout out to all y'all, the indie bookshop owners that are keeping those stories on accessible shelves for our communities.
Absolutely. Shout out to all the small publishers, to all the authors out there. We love books. That's it. And I appreciate everybody who's watching along and dropping in comments. So you were talking about the power of storytelling, and it goes back to like one word or one phrase or one hashtag that actually has so much power into it. And Jose, like I know you began the Yo Cuento conversation, and that's one of our thriving programs 10 years later with Latino Outdoors. Yo Cuento, I count, I matter, and I have a story to tell. And you're all telling your stories right now, and you're all making a difference through sharing that. And younger people can see, they can be because they can see. So, Jose, on to you. We're talking about 10 years. We're talking about past, present, future. In particular, I was scrolling through the interwebs earlier, and I saw a post from James Edwards Mills, who writes for Nat Geo, for Outside Online, and of course the Joy Trip Project. He posted earlier this week during Latino Conservation Week a memory that he had of traveling to the National Arctic Wildlife Refuge with you in 2016. So my question is, almost 10 years later, how have the experiences of that trip impacted you? And do you carry any of the lessons that you learned with you to this day?
Yeah, it's a great question. And yeah, what the Yo Cuento is that reminder that how we matter and how we count through the stories that we both tell, but that we affirm and lean into it. And so, I'm listening as Erick is sharing, like his mom encouraging and pushing him, and how my parents did that without really knowing what was ahead, so to speak. And I say this with a lot of humor. It's like my mom never said, "Mijo, mira, in the future, you're going to travel to the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge." Porque had no concept of it. I didn't even know there was a local wildlife refuge where I grew up in California in the Central Valley. And yet that is where my dad and my uncle would go fishing, and they would take me and tag along. I just knew we were going, vamos al río. And so I say this because something like that trip to me holds two things. One of them is just the power and the majesty of being in that type of landscape that not a lot of people will get to go compared to, say, Yosemite, because of how remote it is, because of how protected it needs to be. There's a lot of factors as to why visitation is low, and that's good. And getting people to connect to caring about a place like that, even if you don't go visit. And so how can that be in a spectrum of this faraway wilderness along with nearby nature? So as people, we're in this connected space that we care about places we may never go to, and yet there's a lot of power in being able to visit some of these places when we have the opportunity. So it has stayed with me because it both held just the experience of being in such a remote location in an oceanic landscape, as has been described. And for me, the responsibility that comes with having that be a factor in how we encourage others to connect to all types of nature, to do exploration that not only has to be far away wilderness, but it can be exploration, as Erick's mentioned, internal. It can be exploration, as Diandra's mentioned through the story. It can be exploration nearby nature, and then just kind of get in low into your micro adventures around the neighborhood, around your city parks. Or I often say, even just watching the crows and the squirrels and what telenovela lives they live every day.
I love the concept of micro adventures, micro exploration. Like that is really, through this work, like whether it's an enormous vista, the polar regions of the world, or an urban garden, or your own backyard, or a fire escape. We all have exploration and adventures like that are close, and if not, there are groups who can help you get there and who can help you along that path. So speaking of people who are helping along that path, as we celebrate the 10 years of Latino Outdoors and Latino Conservation Week, I wanted to ask, who are some voices that you all recognize as going to brave new spaces when it comes to the world of diversifying the outdoors, whether that's in the world of community organizing, in the world of storytelling, or in the world of advocating for a more inclusive outdoors? Who would like to go first? Erick, let's start with you.
Okay. There's so many, but one that comes to my mind is actually it's one of my neighbors. He lives like 3 blocks down. He is Justin Donovan, and he is a professor of archaeology at UCLA, but he's also a well-renowned scuba scientist who goes down and looks for sunken enslaved ships. And for me, he's been an inspiration. Actually, as a matter of fact, early this year, he invited me to get my certification in scuba diving. So for me, he's opening doors to the outdoors for many people, especially people of color.
Diandra, how about you? Who are some of those voices?
Well, I really love that example. I also, so many people that I could speak to. I think off the top of my head, I love what Veggie is doing. They're a community of women, trans, and gender nonconforming folks who are exploring relationship to food. But they're also really well known for the book club that they run, which I think is a very artistic way to explore cultural identity that relates to how we navigate the world today. So I really love what they're doing. There's another organization in SoCal I'm curious if anyone here has heard of them, but they're called Un Mar de Colores. They're an incredible group in SoCal that are cultivating and inspiring diversity and inclusivity through ocean stewardship, using things like surf therapy and environmental education and mentorship for children of color. And lastly, I would plug The Artist. If I have any music fans here, Shateshkat. Shateshkat is an incredible Indigenous artist who has been just creating incredible music since he was very young and using the power of music to talk about land, identity, and colonization, and just the beauty of culture.
And Jose?
Yeah, I don't, I feel the same. We can go down the list and I think of voices that people would be maybe familiar with and maybe less familiar with. And so I think about that, who are the individuals right around the corner with community-based organizations that you may not know until like you're in that community. I also think about voices from history, right? As we talk about unearthing our conservation cultura. And I think of individuals like Rafael Bascal, the Chicano lawyer, right, who was there in the fight for DDT, and along with the migrant farm workers, that they're not given credit for the banning of DDT. And then I think of really clear examples of quote unquote breaking, not even breaking, but it's like expanding, breaking the narrative. Las Cholitas, the Andean, right, the indigenous Andean alpinist climbers that you just see, they're like just showing you, like, we've done this before. Now I'm just doing it in a different way with different tools. And so all of those are kind of voices that for me are exciting, because back when Latino Outdoors started on Instagram, it was hard to find, and now it's so amazing how much you can just see through that visualization.
I think the hope of hearing that there's so many voices out there, doing this work is just so amazing. And as Christian was saying, like, we're celebrating 10 years of Latino Conservation Week and Latino Outdoors. So we're looking a lot at the past and how it was, back then. But I also want to look to the future and see, I'd love to know, what are some positive changes that you've seen in the world of outdoor sports, exploration, conservation, and storytelling. So Diandra, if you have anything that you'd like to share there.
Yeah, I think my answer will also plug another organization. So another organization that I really love is called Hike Club, and I think something that's a club, like going to the club, and something that I think the outdoor space has done a beautiful job of over the past few years has been expanding what it means to be an outdoorsy person, which I think is so culturally important, but also just socially important for everybody, because not everybody fits into the environmentalist outdoorsman mold that was created to really amplify, the image of white cis male hiker, kayaker, rock climber, conqueror. So yeah, I think that has opened so many doors for many, many more people to see themselves as having valid relationship to land, but also just like their daily activities, like sun soaking on the beach or going on little hikes with friends and just picnicking in the park. So I think that that's been something that's opened up the conversation a lot. And even though it seems really simple, it's completely expanded how many people have done things like supported the growth of Intersectional Environmentalists, right? Because now they feel like they're part of the conversation. So yeah, that would be what I said there.
Absolutely. I love that. I think too, like, the concept of stillness also being exploration is something that I've thought about a lot since like starting this conversation. So I love the concept of like micro adventures and sitting in a park and watching the squirrels, as Jose said. So Jose, anything that you would like to share for this question?
I think I'd keep it brief in that a lot of what's exciting is yet to come. And so I sometimes think about, even now, how can I be who I needed 10 years ago, in the sense of providing both that support and how that leans into being a future ancestor, right? So I think that for me is what's exciting is that it's going to continue to evolve and change. And for me, what I've seen as the change, I mean, this is it right here. who I get to be in community with, who I'm talking to, who the organizations that I come up in this space. Back when I was asking, hey, I'm looking for an org like this that I just want to be a part of. Where is it? And be getting the response of like, well, I don't know, but that sounds like it'd be neat. Let us know when you find it. And now I can tell people here it exists, and it's like has amazing individuals like Luisa, like you, like Christian, like so many others that are now part of this vibrant community.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Jose. Eric, do you have anything that you'd like to add?
Yeah, for me, on a personal experience, we talked about the Explorers Club, or Christian talked about the Explorers Club, which I became member last year. That was the club that was kept very white for many years. Started in 1904, and recently with the new president, he realized that there's other people that are exploring, right? Not just whites and not just Europeans. So a few years ago, about 3 years ago, they decided to diversify it, right? Not just in race, but and or age, or but the way people are exploring, right? So I like where that is opening doors to other explorers. And last year I met people from Brazil, from Chile, from Colombia, from Mexico, that were part of the Explorers Club, and I like the future of that.
Thank you, Eric, for sharing that. All right, I think we have one more question. Christian, if you want to send us off to the last exploration today.
Sure. This is a classic question, but it's crucial because you all have broken trail in so many ways for the next generation. And you never know who's listening, and you never know which tip or which bit of advice could help somebody along their path and along their journey. So this question is, what advice do you have for the young emerging explorer, the young emerging poet or organizer or advocate or outdoor leader? Diandra, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think harnessing a lot of what I've said already today, I think that a funny reflection of the past few years has been how much the TikTok world has led young people down this somewhat, at times healthy, but maybe sometimes a little excessive critique of older generations. And I think that I say that because there's so much validity in critiquing systems that have been bestowed upon us, right? The what has been given us and the state of the world that's been given us. But I would say that my advice is to not fall into the trap of the intergenerational divide, especially for young people of color. And as much as we've laughed at like those certain TikToks that just really hit home about like that one tío or that one tia, or like your mom or your dad or your older sister or whatever it is, I definitely think that there's so much beauty in understanding the stories that, or the paintbrushes rather, that certain people were given, and what it looks like to help or to empower younger generations to reimagine what it means to respect and honor our community members, because that concept has been really problematic in the past. What does it mean to respect and honor community members? We get to reimagine that now in ways that don't perpetuate harm or don't shove issues under the rug, but really invite everyone within our communities to grow and heal and thrive.
Thank you for that. Eric?
Yeah, for me, I would say follow your spirit, follow heart. And I say that because when I started exploring, family members were like, why you go to these remote places? And I honestly didn't know, but it was filling my spirit, right? And I'll just encourage people to, if you see a vision, if you want to do it, then just go. Like, don't follow what people are doing or not doing. It's I follow my heart, and I'm very spiritual, and once that opened up, ancestor guided me, and now it's who would have thought, because now this is what I do for a living. This is how I feed my family. I do what my mom wanted me to do, which she encouraged me to explore. And now I do this for a living. This is how I feed my family. So it's just full circle, and I just encourage people to follow heart. You know.
Important advice that you're listening to here. Jose.
I would, yeah, echo all of that, and especially the intergenerational work and healing. I'll keep it simple with something I think some of you have heard me say, which is leaning into the "si se puede," expression, which in terms of the movement work was coined by Dolores Huerta, and you hear it in everything from the soccer game to political campaigns, you name it. And I often add the other element, which is like pero hazlo. And so it's the element of si se puede, it is possible. Imagine it, lean into what is possible, into what is we need, is there for us to redo. And then it still requires the pero hazlo. So what does it mean for you to actually take the steps to do it? And sometimes when it's really hard, you can ask yourself something like, how would the person that I would like to be do what I'm about to do now? And then see what comes out of that reflection and answer for yourself.
I think that is exactly where we can wrap up and leave off. Just words of advice, words of comfort, and words of wisdom, honestly. We appreciate you all so much. Luisa, thank you so much for co-hosting this. Erick, Diandra, Jose, next time we're all in Los Angeles juntos, cafecito on me. But really appreciate you all so much. And happy Latino Conservation Week, and happy 10 years of Latino Outdoors. You all are wonderful people. Everybody who tuned in, thank you very much, and have a wonderful rest of your night. Muchísimas gracias.
Gracias.